All right, good morning, everybody. So today we're going to continue with our SBAC review. This is SBAC review number 2 in your packet. This is page 5. It says, so we're going to try out the first few problems. We'll pause the video so that you can try the rest afterwards, and then we'll just continue going in that way, okay? And then you just have that one assignment that you have for today. So here we go. Question number 1. Now, this is actually a question that we already answered before, but well, it's good to review it in case people were absent. Which type of transformation is described by this? Look, honestly, the best way to do this is to give yourself a visual. So first of all, I'm going to pick some numbers for the x, pick a 1 and a 2 for the y. So if you look carefully, look at what they want you to do to it. They're telling you exactly what to do. They said for the x, give it a negative. For the y, well, leave it alone. So we put a 2 there. And so if I look at a visual of this, that's why I wanted to keep my numbers nice and small. Here's the point 1, 2. And when they said, well, if this is my original point, I'll just call it A, then where would my A prime be? Well, it says -1, -2. So that's where my A prime would be. So notice how this point basically was just flipped over on the y-axis. And if it was flipped over on the y-axis, that's why my answer should be A for this one, a reflection across the y-axis. So for a lot of problems on the SBAC, it's a good idea to actually give yourself a visual of what's going on. So let's look at the next question. So this one was from our previous assignment. It's just back here again. It's just a good review. But of course, one of the latest things that we've done in class was, of course, working with right triangles and, of course, our friend SOHCAHTOA. So looking at this problem very carefully, we have all sides written out, and that's fine. Look at the numbers, though. We have a 6, an 8, and a 10. I want you to look at the answers here. A 4, 5, 5, 3, 3, 4. So notice all of these numbers are very different than all of these here. Well, one thing to remember is you might want to reduce your numbers now. If they're not using the 6, the 8, and the 10, well, remember, all of these are technically divisible by 2. So if we reduce in advance, and that's why I like looking at my answers when I take a test, because sometimes that's going to guide me a little bit. So you see, there's your 5 that we see here. There's the 3 that we see. And then there's the 4 that we see there as well. Now, we could have reduced later, and we can do that as well. So now, clearly, this is a SOHCAHTOA question. But in order for us to apply our friend SOHCAHTOA, so we're going to bring the name in, of course, because it's going to help me with the order of our letters. I should be labeling for SOHCAHTOA itself. So here we go. Remember, in order for trigonometry to survive, it needs an angle. So if you notice, these two are using A as our reference angle. So I'm going to mark my letter A. This is definitely the height. This is right next to the letter A, so this is adjacent. This side has no contact with angle A, which is why we call it the opposite. And so now we're ready. See, if we are truly applying the concept of SOHCAHTOA carefully, look at the name. S is O and H. So here's the letter S, O and H. The question is that really the O? Yep, the O is the 4, the H is the 5, then yes, they definitely set this problem up carefully. So then I look at cosine. Cosine is AH. Is the 5 the A? Yeah, that is not the letter A. That is our hypotenuse. So clearly they made a mistake on this one. That's all you have to do on this question. You're just checking to see if they were set up properly or not. So when I look at the next one does use the letter B as a reference angle. So I do have to be careful here. I'm using this angle up here on the top, which means, yes, this is still the hypotenuse. But remember, as soon as you switch the angle, this is no longer the adjacent. It's now the opposite. This is no longer the opposite. It's now the adjacent. So now we're just going to make sure that they set this thing up properly. So it says sine again. That should be the O. That should be the H. So let's see. The O is the 3. Yep. The H is 4. Not at all. So yet another mistake. that they've made here. And finally, the last question said cosine. Well, that's AH. All I have to do is make sure my picture matches. The A is 4. Yes, it is. A is 4. The H is 5. Absolutely. And so we have yet another correct answer for this one. But if you notice, this was a question where all they wanted you to do was set them up and then check to see if the setup was correct. They love to do that on the SBAC, especially because they don't want you to use a calculator sometimes. So they're going to give you values like this type of question where you have to do no work. All right, let's flip the page and see what we have going on in the next one. All right, an entire page for a problem. Now, keep in mind, look at this thing. They gave me a proof. And then at the end, or not at the end, but right here, they're letting me know that I have two triangles that are equal to each other. So I'm going to highlight those triangles in my picture because I want to know which ones they're talking about. So they said KLP, KLP. So that's this one. So that's why it's good to redraw it, right? If you were working on the SBAC, you should redraw it. And KMP. So this one right here. The yellow one and this blue one. We want to make sure that they are equal to each other. But if you notice, all I need is a reason for saying that triangles are congruent. Well, we only have a few reasons for it. So in order for me to figure out what the right reason is, out of all of these, don't just randomly pick. I know it says a proof. Look at everything that's written. All of that is just here for one reason, to try to confuse you. I already know what triangles to look at. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look for everything that says congruent. That's what I'm going to look for. So it says KL, KM, that's a side. So let me mark it, KL, KM. All right, we got a side going so far. Look at this one. Here's another congruent statement. And it's not a side. Look at that symbol. We should know our symbols by now. That's an angle. So I have an angle. Let me mark it. They both have K as the middle letter. So that means PKL, yeah, there's a 90 there and a 90 right there. Well, then I have an angle. And then if I look one more time, look at this. There's another equality statement. That's all you have to do on this type of question is look for those equality symbols. KP is the same as KP. Well, it makes sense. They share the side. Look, there's that reflexive property. But what's important is there's a little line on top. That means they just gave me another side. And just like that, look, we just found the answer. SAS, side, angle, side, is one of our reasons for saying that triangles are congruent. I know for many of us, we struggle with trying to write the reasons, but they did that for us. All you have to do is look for these congruency statements. And once you find them, you mark them, tell me if it's a side or an angle, and obviously that tells you with the symbols there, which made this problem a lot easier to do. All right, let's keep it going here. All right, so this one, number 4. Another one where all they want you to do is set it up. So we're going to put that one on hold. That's going to be one of the ones I need you to try it on your own. So we're going to jump to number 5, and then we'll pause the video after this so that you can actually try some of these problems out. So look at what it says. Triangle 1 has an angle that measures 34. All right, so all of this is for triangle 1. It has an angle that measures 34 and an angle that measures 48. Okay. Triangle number 2. Triangle number 2 has an angle that measures 34 also, and an angle that measures A. They want me to call it A. They said the A is not 48. All right, that's fine. Not a big deal. Based on the information, Jennifer claims that triangle 1 and triangle 2 cannot be similar. All right, so they're talking about similarity here. I'll zoom in once, I guess I can zoom in now. What value of A in degrees will refute Jennifer's claim? So Jennifer's saying it cannot be similar. When they say they want you to refute it, it means they want you to go against her. So we're going to say they are similar. So here's how it's going to work. If I want two similar triangles, well then draw yourself two triangles. Maybe one's bigger than the other. There's one, and here's the other. Try to make them look the same, right? Similarity means they look the same, they're different sizes. Triangle number one, triangle number two. Okay, now let's go back and read what they said about triangle number one. Triangle number one has an angle that measures 34. I'll put a 34. And it has an angle measure that measures 48. All right, so I'll throw a 48 in there. Here, let me zoom in a little more so we can see it. So we got one that says 34. We have another one that says 48. But you know what? That's not going to stop me. I already know how to find missing angles in a triangle. We know that the three angles of a triangle always add up to 180. So it shouldn't stop me from finding this. So I'm going to go 180, take away the 34, and take away the 48. We might as well just subtract both of them already. All right, so let's find out what that is. Let's get the calculator going. 180 minus 34 minus 48. We get an answer of 98. And I know the picture may not look like it, but that's all right. So I have a 98. Now, triangle number two. Up at the top, we said triangle number two has an angle that measures 34. Well, remember, we already said they're similar. They said one of them is 34. Okay, they got one angle that's the same now. That's the whole point of this. They said another one is called angle A, but they said angle A, see it says it right here, one of them I have to call angle A, but it's not the 48. Well, if I had the 48 here, well, then I'm not going to put an angle A there. I'm going to put angle A right here. So the question is, what can angle A measure? Well, you already have the answer here. How much is angle A in this problem? Right there. They said the A is not the 48. Well, then it had to be this one. So now we know that angle A, look at that, with a little bit of subtraction, is officially 98. And we don't even need the degree symbol on the SBAC. They don't even want you to write that in. They just want you to write in the numbers and nothing else. All right, so let's take a moment. You're going to work on problems numbers 4 through 10. So right now, you're going to try to do numbers 4 through 10, a lot of SOHCAHTOA. So you're going to get some time to work on those, and then we'll come back and check your answers. So take a moment. Again, you're working on numbers 4 all the way to number 10. And yeah, we already did number 5, so that's just one less. But you're definitely starting with number 4, which is exactly what we just did on the previous problem on the other side. All right, so let's stop the video. Let's get some work done, please, everybody. All right, now that you got a chance to work on this, let's start working on number 4. So check your answers. Here we go. No reason not to have this done because we're doing it together here on video. Now, if I look at my numbers, remember, I always look at my answers. 5, 12, 13. Hey, all those numbers are here. So I don't have to change anything. The first one, though, starts with the letter D. That's going to be my angle. So I'm going to look. So that means I'm actually going to do these two problems first because I want to work with the letter D as my reference angle. So I'm going to mark it, which means this is the height. This is the opposite. There's my adjacent. All right, all I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring in my friend SOHCAHTOA to help us out. And all we're doing, don't forget, is we're checking to see if they got the right order. That's it, nothing else. So tangent, TOA. All right, let's make sure they got the right numbers. Is the O the 5? Yep. Is the A the 12? Absolutely. So they did this one right. Now remember, don't do these two yet. Right now, you have this picture ready to work with angle D. So that's how we're going to do this one. All right, so I'm going to look at sign, S-O-H. O and then H. It has to be that order. Is the O the 13? Not at all. Then we're not going to waste our time looking at the rest. That's an automatic no. So now I'm going to look at the next two. Now for the other two, they want me to use the letter F as my reference angle. So I do have to make a couple changes to my picture. Here's my angle that I'm going to look at. This is no longer the opposite. We're looking at the adjacent here. This is not the adjacent. This is now the opposite. And yes, that's still the height. All right, so here we go again. Look, it says sine, S-O-H, O and H. Let's double check. Is the O the 12? Absolutely. Is the H the 13? Yep, everything's perfect there. So we just say yes. Now we're going to do cosine. A-H, A, and then H. Is the A the 13? Nope, the A is supposed to be a 5. Definitely wrong for this one. Again, sometimes that's all they want. They just want you to set it up and then move on. All right, so we had already done number 5, so let's keep this thing going. Let's look at number 6. And by looking at number 6, Carlos designs a skateboard ramp shown in the diagram. Enter the height of the ramp H in inches. Round your answer to the nearest whole inch, which means no decimal. Just give me a nice whole number. That's all they want. Well, they gave me an angle. They gave me a side. This is all SOHCAHTOA. And remember, you have to know how to spell the name out. You're not going to have a word wall during the test, during the SBAC. So here we go. We're going to label for SOHCAHTOA. Here's my angle, which makes this the opposite. It makes this the hypotenuse. And there's no information on the A, so anything with an A goes away. And there's my winning trig function. So S is for sine. Sine of, there's the 22, is equal to a fraction, which is opposite over the hypotenuse. And then, of course, as always, we do a little cross multiplication. 1 times H is H. 132 times sine. Well, that's 132 times sine. And yeah, we're ready for the calculator. As soon as you see that H all by itself, we are ready for the calculator here. So let's see what it says. 132 sine of 22. Remember what they said? They wanted a nice whole number. So that means my answer is either 49 or 50. Remember, those are my two options. 49 or the next one is 50. But because that's just a number 4, we're going to stay at 49. So there's my answer. The height would be 49 inches. And they said, enter the height of the ramp in inches. So all we're going to do is enter the number 49 in the box. All right, let's keep going again. Number 7, consider this right triangle. Determine whether each expression can be used to find the length of side PQ. Select yes or no for each expression. All right, so we don't need to see that whole part there. We can zoom in now a little bit more. This is very similar to the problem where all you do is set it up. Let me show you what I mean. When I look at these first two, they're using the letter P. Well, then that means that's going to be my reference angle. So if that's my reference angle, this is the opposite. This is the adjacent. And notice, they only use the 12 and the 5, so I don't even have to worry about looking for this side. So here we go. The first one they said is sine of P. And they said, which one of these can be used to find the length of PQ? So this is where I'm going to put my X. That's what I would have to solve for according to them. All right, first one they said is sine. Then I'm going to set it up. Sine of P is equal to a fraction. According to my friend SOHCAHTOA, opposite over the hypotenuse. So there's the opposite over the height right there. I forgot the H from earlier. And when I do this, little cross multiplying, 1 times 12 is 12. X times sine is X sine. And how do I get the X by itself? This is what they're asking. I would divide by sine of P. And if you notice, look at that. There it is. X is equal to 12 over sine P. And that's exactly what it says there. So not only am I going to set it up, they want me to start solving it But as soon as we make it look like this, we're done. We can move away from that problem now. Now, the next one said, you're going to try with cosine now. Okay, so here comes cosine. Cosine of P is equal to, well, according to our friend SOHCAHTOA, cosine, right, CAH, is adjacent, the 5, over the hypotenuse, the x. Now, I'm going to stop already. See, look at that. Cosine of P is 5 and x. We don't see a number 5 here at all. That means they used the wrong number. They put a 12 instead of a 5, like it's supposed to be. Then I don't hesitate. I mark it as a no and I move on. They must have set that thing up wrong from the beginning. Again, they're using a 12, not a 5. Now, when I look at the last two here, they do say the letter Q. So if I'm going to look at the letter Q, then I'm going to mark this angle, and here are the changes. Still the hype, but now this is the O for opposite, and this is now the adjacent. All right, let's start off with that first one. They said sine, so I'm going to set up sine of Q. Sine of Q, according to SOHCAHTOA, is opposite, so 5, over the height, which is x. So let's see if they're even using the right number. Yep, they're using the right number. And then we're going to cross multiply 1 times 5, x times sine Q. So all I would do is divide by sine. And yep, look at that. There's the perfect match. 5 over sine Q. 5 over sine Q. Then we know that works as an answer. And then the last one. They said, you're going to try out tangent. Okay, so let's set up tangent. Tangent of Q, according to our friend SOHCAHTOA, right? TOA would be the opposite, the 5, over the adjacent, the 12. Again, I'm already going to stop. The question was, what can we use to solve for that x that we wrote in our picture? This thing doesn't even have an x. There's nothing for you to solve here. You have to use the 5 and the 12, and notice that the 5 and the 12 aren't even in my answer. So that's an automatic no. Again, it doesn't match at all with what it says here. They don't even have an x to begin with. All right, next one. Let's keep checking our answers. It says, let sine of 60 equal to radical 3 over 2. Now, if you get a question like this, this is a slightly tougher question, something that we don't get to see often, at least not in art class for geometry. But it is one of our rules in higher levels of math sometimes, where they say, if the sine of 60 is equal to radical 3 over 2, and then if you look way over here, they said the cosine of something, right? That's just a letter. It's a variable, is equal to radical 3 over 2. Notice how these match. Well, I'll tell you right now, the answer cannot be 60, but there's a quick way to find it. At higher levels, we learn that sine and cosine will have the same answer as long as the angle itself is being subtracted from 90. So in order for me to find this answer, all I have to do is go 90 minus the 60 from up here, and 90 minus 60, there's the 30. And 30 is the answer for this one. It's a weird rule in math. We don't talk about it in geometry much, but it's one of the rules that we can follow. And again, if you take higher levels of math, you'll see it there. But the idea is, as long as your angles are less than 90, which the 60 is, subtract it from 90 and you have an answer for cosine as well, or the angle for cosine as well. So this one, I wasn't expecting you to maybe get it, and that's fine, but at least you're seeing it here. All right, 2 more, and then we'll pause the video one more time. All right, so here's another one. Very straightforward. Straight out SOHCAHTOA. There's my angle. This is the height, but notice they haven't told you what you're looking for, so we're going to read the question carefully. Enter the length of RQ. Then that's where I put my X. That's what I'm going to solve for. The nearest tenth. Now remember, when they say nearest tenth, here's the number 10. So that's just going to be one number after the decimal. The number of zeros in that value tell you how many decimal places to go. So we're just going to go one decimal place here. All right, well, let's set it up. Let's go with SOHCAHTOA here. This is my height, which means now we know this is the opposite. And if it's O and H, no hesitation. We're going with sine. Sine of 55 is equal to a fraction, opposite over the hypotenuse. Put a little 1 under it. And here now we're ready for a cross multiplication. 1 times x is x. 9 times sine of 55 is 9 sine of 55. And just like that, look, we're ready for an answer here. We're ready for the calculator. So 9 sine of 55, and we get 7.37. But remember, they said one decimal place. Let me throw that 0 out. 9, there we go. Sine of 55, okay. When they say one decimal place, that means my answer is either 7.3, but what's next after 73? Well, 74. So it's either 7.3 or 7.4. Because the number that I was blocking out is a 7, then we're going to roll this up to a 7.4. And that's the answer for this problem. They wanted one decimal place, so then we're going with 7.4 in the box. All right. And then there's number 10. Now, if you didn't get to do it earlier because you weren't sure how to handle these, we just saw one of these again. It's the same type of question. They said, which one do you use to solve for x? So we're going to call it x here. And all they want me to do is set it up and then take the first few steps. So we just did one of these. Shouldn't take us too long. The first angle we're going to look at is B. And so that means I'm going to do these two first. Not these two yet. Just these two first. All right. So let's label. Here's the hypotenuse. For this angle, this would be the adjacent. And then there's the opposite. The first one they set to set up was sine. So here we go. Sine of B is equal to a fraction. Opposite, so 6 over the x. Well, first, let's make sure we're using the right number. Yep, the 6 is there. Little cross multiplication. 6 is equal to x sine B. Divide by sine. And there it is. Look at that. X is equal to 6 over sine B. We made it look like this, so that answer works. Let's try a different one. Now they said, remember, we're not doing these yet. You got to do everything with a B first because your picture right now is ready for that B. Tangent they want me to do. Okay, so here we go. Tangent of B, according to SOHCAHTOA, is, right, TOA, opposite, so 6, over the adjacent, which is 8. So now we're going to look over here. Look at that. We clearly see there's an issue. First of all, if they want me to solve for x, there is no x. And we didn't do this wrong. They're the ones that messed up. You can't solve for x if you don't have an x in your equation. So tangent was the wrong choice. All right, let's try it again. Now we're talking about these right here with the letter A. So if I'm going to work with the letter A, then I'm going to mark that as my angle, which means this one here is now the opposite. This one is now the adjacent. All right, so here we go. Opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. They said, let's start off with cosine. Cosine of A, according to SOHCAHTOA, is adjacent, so 6, over the height, which is x, put a 1 under it, and then now, so you see, they're using the right numbers this time. Cross multiply, 6 is equal to x cosine of A, and then I would divide by cosine, which is what we always do in a situation like this. And look at that, there it is, a perfect match right there. So that's a yes. And finally, They want me to use tangent of A. So if I were to use tangent of A, according to SOHCAHTOA, that is opposite over the adjacent. And you see, there comes that same issue. They're asking, what can I use to solve for X, for AB? There is no X, which means tangent is just a bad choice. So that's why we have yet another wrong answer there. All right, with that said, take a moment. We're going to pause the video one last time, give you some time to work on the numbers 11 through 15. Those are the last ones, at least, with this note that we're doing. So take a moment and work on those, and then we'll come back and check the answers. All right, you should have already had some time to work on 11 through 15. So let's see how you did. So we're going to look at 11 through 15. Now, when you see a problem like this, now I need an entire page here. Look at that. For this whole problem, it's just a picture. Stephen is designing a handrail for a staircase and needs to determine what the length of the handrail will be. The top end of the handrail will be 8 feet above the bottom end of the handrail. The angle of depression from the top end of the handrail to the bottom end of the handrail will be 41.5. Enter the length in feet of the handrail itself. And then it says, round your answer to the nearest whole foot. Okay, well, here's the thing. Yeah, they wrote a lot. I get that. But they also already drew it for you. And if this is what's throwing you off, then look, draw your own little picture here. There's the 90. There's the 8. There's the 41.5. There, that's it. That's everything I see here. Now I'm just going to look at a nice little picture. But if you look at the question itself, it says, enter the length of the handrail. Well, the handrail's right here. This is what you actually hang on to. So that means this is where the X goes. And they said round it to the nearest whole foot, so no decimal. That just means one thing. SOHCAHTOA is coming in, so I'm going to label for SOHCAHTOA. If this is my angle, this is the opposite, and this is the height. So once again, O and H, we're going with sine. Sine of 41.5 is equal to a fraction, opposite over the height. Put a 1 under it. And here we go. 1 times 8 is 8. X times sine is x sine of 41.5, of course. And then just like before, if I want to get x by itself, then I need to divide by the sine of 41.5. And look, we're ready for a calculator. The x is by itself. Now, I know it looks weird, but we need to type it in the way we see it. All right, so here we go. 8 divided by the sine of 41.5. They said, give me no decimal, just a whole number. So the answer says 12. So my answer is either 12 or 13. Well, that's just a 0. Then we're going with 12, I guess, feet. But remember, in the box itself, you're going to only enter the number 12. Now, someone in the past had always asked, why did they make the box so big if all you're entering is a number 12? That's just what they do. You just enter the number and that's it. Now, let's check your number 11. See how you did there. Triangle PQR is similar. All right, perfect. To XYZ. Here's what I would do. On my paper, I would write PQR XYZ. The reason I like doing that is I already know that angle P and angle X go together. Q and Y go together. R and Z are the ones that go together. All right, now select all the angles that have cosine of 9 over 15. Well, check it out. Cosine of blank is equal to 9 over 15. This is where your friend SOHCAHTOA can help you. See, we already know that according to SOHCAHTOA, this is the adjacent. So I'll put an A right there. This is the hypotenuse. So there's the height. So then what must be the angle that they're talking about in this picture? If they went 9/15, and I need to know the angle they're talking about, what's adjacent to the 9, so it can only be angle P that we're working with. That's the only angle that's adjacent to this side. So then angle P is the one I'm looking for. But remember what we said. The fact that they're similar, they said, hey, pick all the angles. Yeah, P's the only one that works here. And if it only works here, well, look, the letter P is the same as angle X in this picture over here. Yeah, they twisted that triangle to try to trick us. We don't fall for their tricks. P and X go together. Then those are the two answers I should be marking. And that's it. These are the only two angles that would give me that result. Sometimes they can be that simple. Number 13, almost down to the end here. Consider this right triangle. Enter the length of AC. Okay, that's where you put your X. Nearest 10th. So I write the number 10, and now I know that I need one number, just one, after the decimal. All right, well, this is yet again another SOHCAHTOA question. Remember, SOHCAHTOA is big on the SBAC. There's my opposite. There's my adjacent. If it's O and A, look, you've had enough practice that you know. We're going with the TOA portion of the name. So tangent of 57 is equal to a fraction opposite over the adjacent. So there's the setup. And now, of course, as always, a little cross multiplying. 1 times X is X. 9 times tangent is 9 tangent. And yeah, we are ready for the calculator. So 9 tangent of 57. Now remember, they said nearest 10, so I got to block it off right here. So my options are 138. Well, what's the number after 138? 139. That's the next number on the list. So it's either 138 or 139, and let's see. Because that's a 5, we are rolling it up to a 13.9. There's our answer right there for that box. A lot of SOHCAHTOA on SBAC. A lot of it. All right, let's see the next question, or last two questions. All right, now again, look, we have a picture here. So let's make it easier for ourselves. 555, 150, there's a 90, there's an A, there's a B, and they're connecting the two dots from A to B. There. The picture, don't let that throw you off. Claire climbs 555 feet to the top of a monument. She looks down and sees her friend, who is standing at point B in the diagram. Okay, they still haven't asked the question. So that means it's down here. Enter the measure of the angle of depression A. Well, then that's this one. That's what we're looking for up there. Look, I'm going to put X or something. I'm looking for an angle this time. From Claire to her friend. Round to the nearest whole degree, meaning don't give me a decimal. Whole numbers only. All right, well, this is not the first time we do this. In order for me to find an angle, there's only one thing that can help me, and that's SOHCAHTOA again. If this is my angle, this is the opposite, this is the adjacent, then we're going with tangent. So tangent of A or X, I guess we could call it A, we should call it A, is equal to opposite 555 over the adjacent 150. Now remember, there's only one thing in math that will get rid of just the three letters TAN, and I don't mean division. The only thing that gets rid of TAN and the only thing that helps me find an angle is called the tangent inverse. That's what cancels out these three letters. So all I have to do here is let the calculator take over. I'm going to do the tangent inverse of this fraction right here. So tangent inverse, there it is, with the little -1 of 555 divided by 150. That's why you got to use Desmos. And there it is. Now they said, give me a whole degree. So my answer is either 74 or the next number, 75. Well, let's see. There's an 8. Then yeah, I'm rolling this thing up to a 75. And there's my answer for this problem. Again, all SOHCAHTOA based. And then that brings me to the last one. Now, this one a little more complicated, but we've actually already worked with some of these. So it says, Mark wants to determine the height x of a nearby tree. He's going to stand 47 feet from the base of the tree. The measure of the angle of elevation from Mark to the top is 36 degrees. Select all the following that can be used to find the height of the tree. All right, if we're talking about a tree, there's my tree. That's what I'm going to look for. The tree has to be hitting the ground, so we're going to assume it's a 90. And then, of course, we're going to finish by creating our right triangle. Now, Mark wants to determine the height x, there it is, of a nearby tree. He stands 47 feet from the base. Base means bottom. Then I'm going to write that 47 at the bottom. The measure of the angle of elevation from Mark to the top of the tree is 36. One of the things that we mentioned in class is as soon as they say angle of elevation, you need a horizontal line. So this is the angle that measures 36 degrees. All right, well, look at it carefully. In order for me to solve for x, check this out. We have to go with SOHCAHTOA. This is the opposite. This is the adjacent. So if I'm going to work with the number 36, there's only one trig function I can use with that number 36, and that's tangent. Tangent of 36 would equal x over 47. But you see, I actually don't even have to take this problem further. If I'm going to use the 36, it has to be tangent. So there's a 36, 36, 36. And if you look very carefully here, they use sine. That can't be it. They use cosine. That would be wrong. Tangent is the one. That's one of my answers. Now, I say one because they said select all. So we have to notice something about the other questions or the other choices. They said 54, 54, 54. And if you're wondering, well, where in the world did they get that 54? Remember, there is one more angle in this picture. This is 90. This is 36. It's no surprise that when I go 180 minus 90 minus the 36, yeah, we get 54. So it's a lot like that other problem that we did where, yeah, you're going to set it up more than once. So now we're going to talk about that 54. But if I'm working with 54, this is no longer the opposite. It's now the adjacent. This is no longer the adjacent. It's now the opposite. So even this one, if I'm working with the 54, look at what I have. O and A. And if I'm going to work with the 54, there's only one trig function that I can use again. Tangent of 54 would be equal to opposite over the adjacent. Again, I don't even have to take this further. The only way to use that 54 is with a tangent and nobody else. There's a 54, wrong trig function. There's the 54 again, wrong trig function. There's the 54 with a tangent, and they got that 47 involved. Then these bottom two are the only ones that we can use with this problem. So if anything, this was more of a, hey, let's draw it, and then let's set it up, because none of the others would have worked. All right, now, again, you should have everything done up to number 12 at this point. So the only thing you have left for yourself to do for today is page 13. Remember, I know it says homework. It's really a classwork. You're going to work on this page. And then, yeah, it's just that page, just page 13. So all you have to do is 5 problems where you're setting up SOHCAHTOA for some, and for others, you're just going to be setting up SOHCAHTOA and solving. So take your time, double check your answers with the key, And then this is what I'm going to check when I see you again. All right. Have a good day, everybody.